Bonjour everyone, in today's video I'll be showing you how to turn a basic bodice into a torso block. So I am starting with the front of my pattern first. I have my front bodice, I set that aside. I am going to build the base onto which I'll be adding my bodice to complete the torso block. So I'm using my right angle ruler to create my waist to hip section. So the first line is my center front line, and here I am extending the hip line. And on that line, I am marking a quarter of my hip plus ease onto that line. And now that that's marked, next I am marking my waist to hip measurement on my center front line. And if you saw my skirt video, that is 9.5 inches. And then I'm marking my waist to upper hip measurement as well. That's 5 inches for me. And once I'm done doing that, I am extending the lines from these points. That's my upper hip line. And now I am creating my waistline. On my upper hip line, I am going to mark a quarter of my upper hip measurement plus ease. And on my waistline, I am adding a quarter of my waist measurement plus ease and 1 inch for dot. And now I am connecting my waist to hip using my hip curve ruler, and I'm using the shallowest part of my hip curve ruler because it leaves me with the least amount of excess on my upper hip, and that excess will be added onto my dart. But that was the easiest way to do it for me. Check out my skirt video, I do talk about that as well. And so here I have my front bodice, and my bodice is longer than my actual center front because it does have some ease to it. And the ease is from when I shaped my waist on my bodice. That's why I have the half-inch ease added. And now I am using my ruler to draw a line uh, at 90-degree angle from my center front point, my real center front without the ease. So that's what I have here, and I am going to place it on the bodice. And that line is just to help me keep it straight on my pattern underneath. And you don't have to remove the ease from your pattern. I will show you what my pattern looks like without removing the ease after this one. But I chose to remove the ease from this. So now I'm going to trace all around my pattern until my bust line on the side seam, just like so. And I have a pin. I am going to pin through my bust point so I can have my bust point marked on my pattern underneath. And the pin just helps me to create a mark, and I can just mark that. But you can just measure your apex and place it on the pattern. That's the same thing. It should be the same result. So now the mark that I placed with the pin, I am marking, and I'm just going to place my lines that are on the bodice onto my new pattern before I continue. I want to say in my previous video, I did talk about my bodice some more, where I talked about the ease and how that came about. So definitely check that video out. So next on my pattern, I am going to draw a straight line from the waist up. So that measures my waist plus my dot plus E still. So here I am cutting off my dot. I am cutting to the point. I should not be cutting through it. And I am opening my bust line because I am going to create a bust dot as I close my waist dot, because my new dot will be 1 inch, and obviously on my bodice my waist dot is more than 1 inch. So when I open it up, the bust will be opening up so that I can have my bust dot. So my bodice is now placed on my pattern with my center front where I wanted it to be. And unfortunately I cut through my dot point, but that's okay. Next, you want to bring your side seam down to the waist point that is marked. Mine is a quarter of my waist plus 1 inch dot plus my ease. And in some cases, maybe you would need to have a larger dot or a double dot. But mine did work out to where it reached exactly on that waistline. So now I am just going to mark the rest of my pattern onto the new pattern underneath. I'm tracing my bodies, the rest of my bodies onto the new pattern. And it is possible for the side seam to actually not reach all the way to the measurement that is on my waist. I will show you later on what that looks like. So here I'm just finishing up my waist and just making everything smooth instead of leaving any sharp point or indentation. And next, I'm using my right angle ruler to draw a line from the bust point all the way down onto my pattern. And on my waist, I am going to mark my dot intake that is 1 inch. So I'm placing half-inch on each side of my line. And then next, I'm going to draw my waist dot at the bottom. That is 6 inches for me. So I am going to mark that from my waist towards my hip. And how I came to that measurement is on my measurement video. I will link it for you to check out. It's all the way at the end of that video. So the plan is to remove the excess of my on my upper hip off at the dot with the dot. And so you can see here, I'm splitting that excess into half. And with my straight ruler, it's not enough for me to take half of that measurement on each side. So I'm using my curve ruler, my hip curve ruler to do that so that I can remove the amount that I need to remove, which is the excess that I have on my upper hip. And next, I'm using my straight ruler to finish my dot on my waist dot on the top part. And here I just like to use my ruler to smooth out my lines because I just don't want lines with indentation or dots with indentation or any sharpness. So here I am extending my pattern by half an inch, and the reason is just to shape my pattern to give it some shape instead of having it straight across. So I am extending that line from when I added the half inch, and then I'm using a curve ruler and I'm going to connect my hip point onto that line with my curve ruler. I do apologize for the missing part of the footage from my hip point area. I hope that did not take away from you understanding what was happening in the video because there's not much past that point that I did or after that point. But that is my front pattern for now, and I'm moving on to the back pattern. And sadly, the same thing happened for the back of my pattern where I did not realize that the lower part of my pattern was not in the footage, but it is the same exact thing that I did for the front when I was creating the base, except my ruler faced the opposite side, my right angle ruler. So I'm building the same thing that I built for my front to place my waist to hip measurements and then place my bodice on top. So I'm going to fast forward through it until I finish my base. I don't think I would have fast forwarded this if my pattern worked out as I wanted it to, if my filming, my footage was what I would have wanted to. But this is the exact same thing. I use a quarter of my hip plus is on my hip line, a quarter of my upper hip plus ease on my upper hip line, and a quarter of my waist plus 1 inch for dot and ease on my waistline. So it is the exact same thing for the front. I'm using 1 inch dot for the front and for the back and the same exact measurement. It's just facing a different side. So here I am doing the same thing I did in the front, square up from the waist to mark a line that is no more than 1 inch. And I do this because it is possible for some bodice patterns to reach past the waist point that you mark for your waist measurement. And so you would want to keep it at a waist plus 1 inch dot. And so that line would help for the front. And if you extend it for the front, then it's best to do it for the back as well. And so here I have my back bodies that I'm going to add to the base that I just created. And because I have a sway back, it's best for me to accommodate that and create my pattern in such a way. So I already did that for my bottom for the skirt that I made. So I'm just doing the same thing here that I did on my skirt pattern. I am also going to lower my waist by half an inch on here like I did for my skirt pattern. So this is what I do to accommodate my sway back. I normally go between half an inch to 3/4 of an inch. I just do so because I feel like that gives me enough of a tilt, at least a tilt that I feel matches the tilt of my body. So next, what I'm going to do is get my bodice and make my waist straight onto my bodice. So I'm placing my ruler at a 90-degree angle to where it touches my waist point. That's where I am going to trace a line on my back pattern. And if I did not have the sway back, I would have still done this. It would have just blended into my pattern. I would have still created a straight line, and that part that is about 3/8 of an inch, I think, it would have just blended into my waist because I would have touched that line to my natural waist like this. But with the sway back, I touch it to the point that I mark for my sway back. And so that's what my waist is going to be like. So I have a tilt going on, and my body has a tilt, and that is the goal here. And if you want to, you can draw a new waistline if you want, but I did not do so. So next, I am going to just trace all around my back bodice. Once I place my waist where it needs to be touching my sway back point, just like I have on my bottom for my skirt. So really, it's about connecting your top to your bottom in a way that works for your body, the shape of your body, because you do have a curve at your waist. However, the curve is at your waist, you are going to accommodate that when you put these two pieces together. And so that's really what the torso block is about, in my opinion. So I just trace all around it once I place it where it needs to be. And that is that. I am taking a pin and I'm placing it at my dot point, and just so I could have that marked on my pattern underneath, so I can have that point marked. And now that that's done, I'm going to trace my lines like they are on my original pattern. Next, I'm going to draw a line which is at a 90-degree angle from the upper chest line at my back on that dot point, going straight down, just like this. And now I'm going to mark the length of my back dot, which is also on my measurement video that I will link to this video for you to check out on how I came to that measurement, or you can check out my skirt video as well. And so here I'm marking my dot measurement, which is 1 inch. So I mark half inch on each side of my line. Then I use my straight ruler to mark my dots at the top, and I'm going to use my curvy ruler to create my dot at the bottom. And using the curvy ruler allows me to remove the excess that is on my upper hip off of the pattern. I get to remove it from my dot. That's why I use the curvy ruler. And I move it along to where my ruler is shallow enough to give me the measurement that I need to take off. You don't want to take off more than you need to take off. So I move my ruler to a more shallow end so that I can remove what I need to remove by paying attention to the excess. And like I said previously, I like to smooth out my dots because I don't like indentations or any sharpness going on. So the next thing I'm going to do is go in 1/4 inch from my center back. I don't just have a sway back, I have a lower hanging bottom. And because of that, I'm going to bring that 1/4 inch all the way to my upper hip because I feel that's where my back starts to go out because it does hang lower on my body. So I go in 1/4 inch and I take it all the way down to my upper hip line. And from there on, I'm using my curve ruler to connect my center back line at the hip to that point using a curve ruler. And I'm going to smooth out that line, of course, so I can avoid any indentation or sharpness going on. So that's how I do it. And the reason why is because my butt hangs lower on my body than most people. If that was not the case, I would have done it just like you see me doing this here for my upper back. I bring that 1/4 inch all the way to the dot point. So I would have brought it to the dot point on my bottom if that was not the case, if I did not have the lower back. But my neck also, I sometimes go in 1/4 inch to contour my back and curve it because I do have a curvy back. But I'm not doing this on this pattern, but I will show you what that looks like at the end of the video where I did that on a pattern. Next, I'm going to do the same thing I did for the front, lower my pattern by half an inch or extend my pattern by half an inch, adding half an inch to my pattern. And then I'm going to draw a line across from where I extended it. I extend my center back. For the front, I extended the center front. And then I draw a line and I'm connecting my hip point from my side seam. I'm connecting the hip point to that line that I just drew. That is just me shaping my pattern. That's just how I add shape to it. In my opinion, I don't think that's necessary. I just think it gives a more finished look. So that's why I do that. Next, I'm using my curve ruler to smooth out my waist point, and that's it for my back pattern for now. And I went ahead and cut everything out. That's what I have here. Now I'm going to add my contour guidelines onto my pattern pieces. And I'm mainly going to do the one that's different. That is the Empire Style Contour Guideline. It is different on the torso than it is on the bodice. So I'm just going to do that one on camera. So what I do is open up my compass to my bust depth measurement. And then I trace a circle measuring the bust depth all around from the bust point. And once I finished that, I then had my pattern with my circle measuring my bust depth. And now I am going to finish my bust dot. I measure the middle of my dot and I draw a line from that midpoint to the dot point. And then I'm going to shape my dot. And then of course we don't start our dot from the bust point. So I measure 1 inch from the bust point, the dot point, and then I draw lines connecting the dot legs to that point. And now I am going to create my Empire Style guideline. So I am going to mark 3/8 of an inch from the middle of my dot. From that middle line, I go 3/8 of an inch on each side of it on that circle, and then I connect those points to my bust point on each side, and then I then connect it to my waist dot, my dot legs at my waist, and that's how I create my guideline. And then because we don't start a dot from the bust point, I go 1 inch down from the bust point and then connect my points to that 1 inch mark. And I do so also for the waist dot. I connect my waist dot to that point and also the Empire style guideline to that 1 inch point from the bust. And I like to smooth out my dot points or when where my dot points meet. I like to smooth that out. So I went ahead and finished everything off camera. The rest of the contour guidelines is the same as it is on the bodice, and I will link that video for you as well. Next, I went ahead and cut out my pattern onto fabric, and I will let you watch how I put that together. Everything together, this is what it's looking like. This is my front. It is not looking too bad in my opinion. My hips always come out looking bigger in my opinion. However, when I do not remove the ease at my waist when I'm creating my torso pattern, I don't have that issue. But at my upper neck, at my the back of my neck, you can see how it's looking like. That's because I did not contour it. Like I said, I would leave that for you to see, and I will show you when I contour it what it looks like. But this is my back. My waist doesn't have any bunching going on because I did accommodate my sway back. And so yeah, this is my side and my front. So here, this is a different pattern where I did not remove the ease on my center front. So I'm going to show you how I came to that and how I end up using my line that I drew from my waist. So this is my bodice that I placed on top to draw it, to trace it around. And you can see it is my full bodice with nothing removed. And when it's time to move my side seam onto my waistline, you can see here my side seam is then too short. It seems too short that it reaches to that line that I drew, which is still the measurement of my quarter of waist measurement plus 1 inch. So if I move it all the way to my waist, that would give me less than quarter waist plus inch plus 1 inch for dot. So my waist would end up being smaller. I would not have room for a dot. So that's why I use that line draw it up from the quarter waist plus 1 inch, and then it reaches to it. So I marked from there. So the total I had here was 5/8 of an inch. That's how much I had added to my waist, and then I remove it from my hip line. And that ended up being how I shaped my hip line instead of me adding that extra half an inch. And so here I am marking 5/8 of an inch because on the front I have 5/8 of an inch. That's why I do so at the back. So then my waist matches. At least that's what it should be. But I will show you the mistake that I made. But my waist does my waist point does match. I just needed to smooth things out, and I did not. And so here I had placed my pattern on top, and I placed it higher than my waistline that I marked on my base. And so I did not remove anything from my pattern here. I simply brought the center back, the waist point, to my sway back adjustment point, which is half an inch from the waistline. And so I just tilted it to come and meet that point. So I removed nothing from the front and nothing from the back. I just ended up having to adjust my waist point. That's all. And the only other thing that I did was, of course, contour the back of this pattern that I made the neck at the neck. I removed a quarter of an inch to contour the center back neck, or the neck point at the center back. I'm not sure how to say that, but I did contour around my back altogether. So everything else is the same as I showed you in the other pattern. I was just showing you what it looks like when you don't remove the ease at the front. And here I'm just showing you the difference between the two patterns, the original one that I made, which is the one that is marked as my back, and the other one that I just did to show you different points that is contoured all around the back. And I just wanted to show you how the angles are still the same. The only thing is that, of course, my waist point on this pattern that is on top is higher, and therefore I should have used my ruler to start my hip from there. I should have adjusted my hip, and I will show you what happened because I did not do that, meaning that I lost some of my measurement that I needed, and my fabric told me. Drag lines will tell you. And this is what this pattern came out looking like. For the front, I obviously need to learn to sew all the way to my dot point, especially because my bottom dots were curved, but this was just a simple. But anyways, this is my side. You can see at the neck, it is touching my skin. It is curved, but also you can see the drag lines on my side seam where there's pulling, there's tension going on because I don't have enough fabric. I did not cut enough fabric because I made a mistake. And this is what I mean. For my pattern, where my waist is up, my waist point is up, I was supposed to use my hip curve ruler to redraw my hip curve to adjust it by using my curve ruler starting from the waist point. That's how you're supposed to draw it from your waist. You're using your hip curve ruler to finish drawing the side seam. And so I did not do that. And you can see it's about almost a quarter of an inch missing, and that's one side. For four sides, that's almost 1 inch. So that was my mistake there. Overall, I like this pattern. I like that I didn't make any adjustment to my bodice. I used it as is to get to the result. I simply make adjustments at my waist on the side for my side seams. That's the only adjustment I had to make. So I like it for that reason. I don't know why it doesn't seem professional enough for me. That's why I showed the first pattern first. But anyways, if you want me to go into detail about something, I will do it. I don't know who will watch this, and it's long, it's a lot of talking, so I don't know who will watch it.